All right, so today we're going to talk about the initial plugins that you have. First time you're recording using an Apollo device with a Unison preamp technology. So this is going to be a quick run through. So when you first buy it, unless you buy new plugins right out the gate, as far as preamps go, you only get one Unison enabled preamp for for recording like Vox and whatnot. I mean, there's some, I guess, guitar emulations, but I mean, that's not really the same. So, when I'm saying preamp specifically for a vocal application. So, in this case, when you first start, you can absolutely use just the regular, no unison preamp, just the universal audio preamp. Very clean, not designed to add any real color into the signal. So, really nice for getting clean takes that you can easily add any preamp emulation after the fact in the mix. But and then just general good, clean, solid recordings. The first most important thing to remember is the quality of your recordings is going to drive how easy it is to mix those vocals later on. So you always want to focus on your first initial recording and input. So, a good treated space, a good, decent microphone. I mean, in this day and age, you could get a decent microphone for about 250, $300. Like the Aston Spirit, about $350, I think. I really like it a lot. Really, ultimately, I have a deeper voice, as you hear, so it's nice because it brings out more of the highs. But I record other artists and clients with the Slate ML1 just because it's very neutral and it doesn't add or boost any frequencies on any spectrum. So it allows me to get a very honest take from whatever the artist is putting in, and then really easily apply, stuff in the mix. Now, one thing is though is it's on its own with the right recording environment and inputs processing. Like, you don't really need a lot in the mix. That microphone's that good. I really like it. So let's go ahead and start setting this up. So one thing that you want to do is, make sure to gain stage your beat before you even start recording. A lot of folks come in really hot beat, but you don't want that. You just want it to be a decent level. What I try to shoot for is about 12. Keep it consistently there. And then typically on my master output, I'm looking for around 6 dB. Here I'm even driving it a little bit hotter than what I typically would, and you can do it in many different ways. For me, I'll usually use the spritzing channel. Get that down to around 6 as a sustained output. Yep. The reason, of course, why that's important is just because when you record vocals and you're adding vocal stacks and you're starting to add additional processing to those vocals, each one of those imparts a little bit of gain in their own way. So, the overall, perceived volume of things will start getting louder. And if you're mixing hot, then you're going to start clipping, you're going to have bad signals. So always gain stage your beat first, even before you start recording. You can turn it up in the headphones or down as they need for recording, but a solid gain stage beat, that you want to start at that level. So then, as you see from my inputs, I know a lot of people say, try to hit -18 while recording, but and yeah, that's fine. You can definitely keep it at -18. You get plenty of headroom. I personally like to actually record anywhere in between 18 to 9 dB consistently with spikes hitting, I would actually say more like 10 dB with spikes hitting anywhere between 9 to 6 dB. Some might say that's too hot, but for me, I've found generally it works extremely well with every vocal that I record, whether it's mine or whether it's somebody else's. So, every processor I use, regardless of the preamp, I always start with making sure that my levels are consistently sitting between 18 and 10, 12. For RMS, RMS is your average, what you're doing all the time, and then peaking anywhere from 9 to 6 dB. I try not to get any more than 6, might hit a 5, but really I try to keep it no more than 6, 5.5 tops. It just, when you keep it there at that good range and you stay consistent, it just makes your mixing process become faster and faster. So just keep that in mind. And then, so right here, I am using a Unison preamp, but even when I turn that off, so you can see my volume here went way low. So if I wasn't using that, here we go, I'd bring up my preamp here, check, check. And then, yeah, try to keep with the same level as you see. Might need a little bit more boost. So right there's my optimal recording level, even that little high. Also, as I'm talking, I'm a little bit closer to the mic than I typically would be when I'm recording lyrics, because obviously, there's a lot more passion going on and energy there. So, try to probably be maybe about a handful, not a handful, a 4.5 to 6 inches away, depending on the microphone. Sometimes you can get a little bit farther, but the farther than 6 inches, to me, you start picking up a little bit more air in the room. And so anywhere from 4 to 6 inches, depending on the mic, is probably optimal positioning. And then, of course, the ability to deliver a consistent level vocal while you're recording. Yes, like singers are very dynamic, but, even when you're rapping, if you're doing a consistent flow, kind of like right now, I'm talking at a same consistent volume, but then you get energy, in a certain part that you want to hit, pull back from the mic and hit it. So, you might be something like, hey, hey. Well, if I do that right in the mic, then I'm going to start peaking. So you pull back a little bit. So mic control, mic, technique, very important to consider. So that's using the clean preamp right there. So then let's go ahead and turn back on the Unison preamp. So the 610B is what you get out of the box. Really great preamp. I like it a lot. These days I use the 1084. Actually, I use an external preamp, but ultimately, it works well. And so I go ahead and, set it up. What I like is on this preamp here, I set up my input gain to just +5, because I feel like in general, the default is a little too low for a good, preamped, nice warm vocal without it being too saturated. Because with this being at 0 or less, unless you're, for anything outside of vocals, maybe that different, but for most vocalists, I find +5 on the input. And this big knob, that's where your tube saturation comes in. So right here is where you start controlling how much saturation is applied from the tube. So what I like to do is I actually, immediately before I even start messing with the big knob, I also add almost up to this first dot, or right around the first dot, and then from there is where I start staging my gain level there. And so, if somebody might have a different voice and they start, for some reason, something in the range of their voice might hit this big knob position just not in a pleasing manner, then you can pull that back and compensate with the output down here. But, for general applications, I find, anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 usually gets the job done. Right now, I'm using it about 5.25. and I'm getting a really nice signal from that. So, and then, you know, if you want to add a little bit of highs on there, you can. As you hear, it's increasing the highs of my voice. So, and it's a really nice EQ. My thing with EQ on recording is once it's there, it's there. So, you know, be very careful about the EQ that you use. Typically, I record with no EQ, maybe a slight boost here on the 10K. And because 10K is usually where, you know, you're going to get that pleasing, you know, nice high top end. So yeah, a little 1.5K there. For me, it works because of how deep my voice is. For those that have higher voices, that actually might be a little much. So, you know, just obviously, you know, through reiterative recording process, you'll figure out which one works best. But about right here is where I typically find a good starting point. So now that I have my Unison set up, you have two options. Let me hide these real quick. We don't really need any of that showing. You have two options, and I'm going to bring up console too in case you're not using Luna. Alrighty, so let me get this guy over here. All right, so you have two options here, right? So for the difference between recording in console and then recording in Luna is in Luna, I have two different sections for recording my additional processing. Unison is always recorded. Know that. Regardless if you have anything else, Unison is recording because as you see here, there's a separate section for your additional inserts. But if you see here, there is still a separate section. There's just no different record and inserts. There's just inserts. So it's separate because on console, if you decide not to apply the processing on the way in, you only want to hear it. You hit this UAD monitor. These inserts will not be recorded. However, this Unison pre will. And then in Luna, if you're using that, if you want to record your effects going in, you'll pop them in the record effects, and then you'll pop them in. Or if you don't, you just want to hear them, you'll pop them in the inserts. And we'll see the difference in the signal when we record it in here in a second. So then you're also given additional processing options. I'm going to go ahead and turn off console for now. One of the beauties of, again, the Apollo system is to have the Unison pre emulating real hardware componentry, and then the ability to add additional processing on the way in at the same time. So what's really nice, let's see. Why it's not giving me that? Okay, well, I'll turn off my favorites. So what's really nice is they give you two processors that are very famous for recording vocals, the 1176 and the LA-2A. You can get away with using either or by themselves, or you can use them in series. It's up to you. But I recommend starting with, really, I would recommend starting with the LA-2A. But I just think it's one of the best vocal tracking compressors. However, what's nice about the 1176 is it's a little faster. So if you're coming in, you have a hard vocal, I find, you know, a lot more like boom bap style, faster, harder hitting, not even boom bap, just faster, hard hitting vocals. Doesn't matter the style. You know, they're coming in, the transients are hitting faster. If you're doing something really fast and, you know, you're hitting a lot of words in rapid succession, the 1176 is a lot faster than the LA-2A because you could also dial in the speed of the 1176 versus the LA-2A, which is a set speed. So with the 1176, you're driving the input or the compression rather, using this input knob. And so what I would recommend doing is trying to get yourself about 3 to 5 tops dB on the way in max. Like, you really want it to only control those fast peaks that are hitting so you don't clip, but then you're still leaving room in the dynamics between your vocals in the mix so you can add the compression that you want that has the tonal option, the tonal properties that meet the song that you're using. So, it may not be an LA-2A or 1176 in the mix. You might use a Fairchild or, whatever else that works. But you want to make sure that you leave room for the compression to happen in the mix. Otherwise, there is no more compression and you're destroying your takes. So compress heavily if you want it for creative purposes. I'll do that a lot. But typically you want to compress right where you're seeing that needle hit right now. So when I'm doing a vocal, congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray, but I'm always on the move. Sometimes don't have shit to say, so I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to slip away. So kind of dialing that in so that way, it's really just hitting that 3 to 5. Occasionally it hits a 7. I'm okay with that because at this point I know my vocals very well. So I know and for me, I'll still be able to add some in the mix, and if that's not hitting it too hard, just that occasional 7. But 3 to 5 on the average 3 is what you really want to hit. I don't typically compress more than 4 to 1 on recording on the way in. And then on these two knobs right here, so the left side, these numbers are faster, these numbers are slower. So typically I'll hit a little faster attack, a little bit slower release. Right here, this setup almost is the typical volume settings that I use right here. Occasionally I might adjust the input. Again, it depends on, how loud the vocalist is hitting it, but, that's where I'll try to keep it at there. The other very famous one that you get, and you'll hear it talked about all the time, is the LA-2A. Similarly, if you're using it by itself, let me turn off the 1176. If I'm using it by myself, I'm going to try to do the same thing. So check. Congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray, but I'm always on the move. Sometimes don't have shit to say, so I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. So you see there, I was getting a little bit louder than what I typically would. But congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees. Yeah, that's about right there. So that's actually still getting it a little bit louder than what I want. But ultimately, those two right there on the way in on their own, 3 to 5. Now, the other thing a lot of folks like to do is actually use them in series. So I'm going to enable this guy here. I'm going to open it. So it doesn't matter which one you put first or last. It really ultimately depends on which one works for your sound. I typically do the faster compressor first, because it's going to hit the faster transients faster, right? So then the leftover transients that are coming behind are coming into the LA-2A. And then so for the LA-2A, I'm only going to hit that about 1 dB. Congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray, but I'm always on the move. Sometimes don't have shit to say, so I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. Yeah. So that right there, man, really nice, very controlled vocal. You can come in hard and typically not clip. If you coming in harder than what these are hitting, you can adjust them accordingly. But, the goal ultimately is still having the same, recording gain levels, but having a more controlled environment. So that way your vocals come in consistent, they're already in a nice envelope that you still have room to compress in the mix, but you're not clipping, and you're keeping it in where you can add some additional gain and headroom without destroying the signal. So that's pretty much it there. So let me hide these guys here. So what does that look like when I'm recording? So let's just flip it over here. And let's take a quick run on that. Check. Yeah. All right. Congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray. But I'm always on the move, sometimes don't have shit to say. So I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. I'm rotten to the core when the lay is stripped away. Know the moment of my death, I just haven't picked the day. Yeah, so you can see there's no clipping there. It's all kept in a contained box here. Let's take a quick listen. Congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray. But I'm always on the move, sometimes don't have shit to say. So I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. I'm rotten to the core when the lay is stripped away. Know the moment of my death, I just haven't picked the day. So you can see that the vocal is still real, you know, it's nice, but you can see in the recording, it plays well. It's even though there's dynamic range here, you know, the vocal overall sound, let me just mute this really quick, is really consistent. So congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray. But I'm always on the move, sometimes don't have shit to say. So I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. I'm rotten to... Congratulations, made it through another day. Though I don't live on my knees, I do take the time to pray. But I'm always on the move, sometimes don't have shit to say. So I stare him in the eyes, ain't the type to look away. I'm rotten to the core. So you can see that even when the harder peaks hit, there's not a clip there. It's constrained. And controlled, so I still have room to increase and decrease. And typically I don't really adjust clip gain. I use, as you saw earlier, the Britson channel or something of that effect. So from here, so you've already did your initial compression. So, you know, here you can start doing some EQ if you need. And so what's really kind of nice, I mean, in this case, you have a strip that they give you that you could use. And there you have it. I mean, really, the 610B could take you a long way. You get a really good sound out of it, especially I recommend recording, you know, repeatedly until you kind of dial in the sound. You understand how it's imparting the flavor it does to your vocals, and it's optimized to the sound that you want. The last thing you could probably do, and again, it's along the kind of same vein that I was mentioning about sending some EQ on the way in, but the other processor they give you that's really nice is the EQP Legacy. So, I mean, even just adding it onto the signal starts giving it a little bit of harmonic saturation from the, you know, the internal preamps, or I mean, not preamps, internal tubes and transistors that it's, you know, emulating. So just putting it in gives you a little bit richness. So what you could do, kind of as you saw with that 10K boost, you could also come here, don't do the 10K boost on the preamp, hit your 10K boost here with the EQP, and as you can see, like, my vocals getting a lot higher, and then just set that bandwidth that makes sense for the vocalist that you're using it for. Again, I don't normally recommend adding a lot, so even that would be very exaggerated. But you could add a little 10K boost there. If you have a vocalist that has kind of a lighter voice, maybe higher frequency range, and it could use a little boost on the low end. Again, be very diligent with this, not light, you know, really consider that, because you could add that in the mix. because the beauty of adding it in the mix is every song's a little different. So you might if you use EQ decisions on the way in, you can't reverse those decisions on the way in the mix, and then they're irreversible. And that might be the best take you get from the artist, or the only opportunity you have to record them. And then now you have no way to, give them the optimal, sound quality they could get if you would have waited for that EQ decision in the mix. But that's about it. I hope this was helpful, and that you can take these principles here and apply them to almost any other Unison preamp you decide to get, and they just help you, kind of get that next step that you're looking for. If you need anything, reach out to me in the comments, and then I'll help you as best I can. Thanks.